Hi, boys and girls. This is Miss Charlotte, and I'm reading the second book I've recorded today by the same author and illustrator. This is by Byrd, Baylor, and the pictures were drawn by Mr. Peter Parnell. The name of the book is The Table Where Rich People Sit. Now, Byrd Baylor lives in the western part of the United States, and so I thought I'd show you some pictures because it will make some of the words in the book make more sense when you know what they're referring to. They talk about canyons. This is a canyon. It's like a deep hole in rock that's been carved by wind and water. These pictures all come from Utah. That's a state that my husband and I used to live in. But that's a canyon. You can see the river running through, and it's carved away this rock. The other thing that is referred to in this book is how far you can see when you live in a desert, where there aren't a lot of trees. You know, the Rocky Mountains in our country are called Rocky Mountains because at the very top, no trees can grow. There isn't enough soil, it's too cold, and so all you see is the bare rock that makes up the mountain. But you can see a long, long way. We're probably looking at 20 miles between where the person with the camera standing and those mountains in the distance. So you can look a long, long way in the west because there are often no trees to get in your way. So this is called The Table Where Rich People Sit. If you could see us sitting here at our old, scratched-up, handmade kitchen table, you'd know we aren't rich. But my father is trying to tell us we are. Doesn't he notice my worn-out shoes, or that my little brother has patches on the pants he wears to first grade? Why does he think that old rattletrap truck is parked out by our door? You can't fool me, I say. We're poor. Would rich people sit at a table like this? My mother sort of pats the table and she says, "Well, we're rich and we sit here every day. Sometimes I think that I'm the only one in my whole family who is really sensible. Maybe I should mention that my parents made this table out of lumber somebody else threw away. They even had a celebration when they finished it. I understand. I like this table fine, but all I'm saying is you can tell it didn't come from a furniture store. It just doesn't look like a table where rich people would sit." But my mother thinks if all the rulers of the world could get together at a friendly wooden table in somebody's kitchen, they would solve their arguments in half the time. And my father says it wouldn't hurt to have a lot of cookies piled up on one nice blue plate that everyone can reach without asking. But tonight it's our kitchen and our argument and our family meeting and our very spicy ginger cookies piled up on my mother's one good blue-flowered plate, exactly in the center of the table. I'm the one who called the meeting, and the subject is money, and I say we don't have enough of it. And that's a picture of world leaders sitting at their handmade kitchen table eating cookies from her mother's one good plate. I tell my parents they should both get better jobs so we could buy a lot of nice new things. I tell them I look worse than anyone in school. I hate to bring this up, I say, but it would help if you both had a little more ambition. They look surprised. You can see they never think about the things we need. Right here, I might as well admit that my parents have some strange ideas about working. They think the only jobs worth having are jobs outdoors. They want cliffs or canyons or desert or mountains around them whenever they work. They even want a good view of the sky. They always work together, and their favorite thing is panning gold, piling us into that beat-up truck and heading for the rocky desert hills or back in some narrow mountain gully where all the roads are just coyote trails. They love to walk the wide arroyos, the dry stream beds, where little flecks of gold are found. They used to tell us that the truck just knew which roads to take and that coyotes showed them where to look for gold, but I never did believe it. After a month or two out there, they always had a little bit of gold to sell, but you could tell it never made them rich. As far as I can see, it was just an excuse to camp in some beautiful wild place again. And can you see their pickup truck there in the distance, heading off to some beautiful wild place? And in front, those are coyote tracks, coyote footprints. They don't mind planting fields of sweet corn or alfalfa. They like to pick chili and squash and tomatoes. They'll put up strong fences and train wild young horses. But they say they can't stand to be cooped up indoors. So now, of course, my dad is asking, how many people are as lucky as we are? But I've called this meeting and I say, I bet you would make more money working in a building somewhere in town. Remember our number one rule, he says? We have to see the sky. You could look through a window, I say, but they won't even think about it. Do you see what I mean about being the sensible one? And I don't know if you can tell that yellow desert figure is actually the face of a horse. And then these are the vegetables they've planted and are picking. Finally, my mother says, all right, mountain girl, we're going to explain how we figure our money. You be the bookkeeper tonight. She hands us each a pencil and some yellow paper. She gives some to my little brother, too, though he'll just sit there pretending to write when we write, or he'll draw people dancing up in the sky. And by the way, my name's not really Mountain Girl. They call me that because I was born in a cabin on the side of a mountain where they were looking for gold one summer in Arizona. They say it was the most magical place, the most beautiful mountain they ever climbed. Maybe it was, but you know how those two exaggerate. Anyway, they wanted my first sight to be that mountainside, so they held me up outdoors at sunrise when I was just about 8 minutes old. The truth is, I still like sunrise quite a bit. And see, that's the mom and dad holding their newborn daughter up to the sun when she's just 8 minutes old. No wonder I had to call this meeting about money. Can you believe my father is sitting here looking me straight in the eye and saying, "But Mountain Girl, I thought you knew how rich we are." I say, we can't get very far in this discussion if you won't even admit that we're poor. I'll prove to you right now, he says. Let's make a list of the money we earn in a year. How much is that, I ask. I'll write it down. But he says, not so fast. We have a lot of things to think about before we add them up. What kind of things? My mother says, we don't just take our pay in cash, you know. We have a special plan, so we get paid in sunsets, too, and in having time to hike around the canyons and look for eagles' nests. But I say, can't you give me one single number to write down on this paper? So we start with $20,000. That's how much my father says it's worth to him to work outdoors where he can see the sky all day and feel the wind and smell rain an hour before it's really raining. He says it's worth that much to be where if he feels like singing, he can sing out loud and nobody will mind. I have just written $20,000 when my mother says, you better make that $30,000 because it's worth at least another $10,000 to hear coyotes howling in the hills. So I write $30,000. Then she remembers they like to see long distances and faraway mountains that change colors about 10 times a day. That's worth another $5,000 to me, she says. I'm not surprised because my mother claims to be an expert on mountain shadows in the desert. She says she can tell time by the way those colors change from dawn to dark. I scratch out what I had and write $35,000. And there's some of the mountain shadows. My father thinks of something else. When a cactus blooms, you should be there to watch it because it might be a color you won't see again any other day of your life. How much would you say that color is worth? 50 cents? My brother asks. But they decide on another 5,000. So now I write $40,000. And there she's looking at blooms on cactus. Did you know that cactus have flowers? They do. Our house in Utah actually had a cactus garden that the previous owner had planted. But I'd forgotten how much my father likes to make bird sounds. He can copy any bird, but he's best at white-winged doves and ravens and red-tailed hawks and quail. He's good at eagles, too, and great-horned owls. So of course he had to add another 10,000 for having both daybirds and nightbirds around us. I cross out what I had and I write $50,000. There's her dad, and there's some of the birds whose calls he imitates. And of course, he learned those bird calls by being outside where he could hear the birds. Now my mother says, let's see what our mountain girl is worth to us. I'm beginning to catch on to their kind of thinking, so I suggest I'm worth $10,000, even though my little brother has begun to laugh. Don't underestimate yourself, my father says. Remember all those good lists you make for us? He's right, I do. I make a list of the best books each one of us has read, and a list of all the ones we want to read again. I also made a list of all the animals each one of us has seen and the ones we still most want to see out in the wild, not in a zoo. Mine is a mountain lion. I've dreamed of him 4 times, and I've already seen his track. My father chose a grizzly bear. My mother wants to see a wolf and hear it call. And my brother can't decide between a dolphin and a whale. I remember every one because I make the lists. They end up deciding that I'm worth about $1 million. I say I don't think I am, but I write it anyway. In fact, it turns out that every one of us is worth $1 million. So we have $4,050,000. I don't know if you can see, there's the grizzly bear that I think the mother wants to see. And there's the mountain lion that she wants to see, and the whale her brother wants to see. And the coyote. Oh, that's a wolf. Excuse me, the mother wants to hear a wolf. So that's the wolf. Then I realize that I want to add $5,000 myself for the pleasure I have wandering in open country alone, free as a lizard, not following trails, not having a plan, just turning whichever way the wind turns me. They say that's certainly worth $5,000. So that makes $4,055,000. Finally, my brother says to put down $7 more for all the nights we get to sleep outside under the stars. We all say, $7 doesn't seem to be enough. We talk him into making it another $5,000. Now my paper says $4,060,000, and we haven't even started counting actual cash. To tell the truth, the cash part doesn't seem to matter anymore. I suggest it shouldn't even be on the list, our kind of riches. So the meeting is over. The rest of them have gone outside to see the new sliver of moon. But I'm still sitting here at our nice homemade kitchen table with one cookie left on my mother's good blue-flowered plate, and I'm writing this book about us. I kind of pat the table, and I'm glad it's ours. In fact, I think the title of my book is going to be The Table Where Rich People Sit.